Admiral Vexthor's eye stalks quivered with what could only be described as the Zalaxian equivalent of abject horror. Yes, sir. The exact transmission was, touch our colony again and we'll rip your tentacles off and use them as jump ropes. The human ambassador then terminated the communication. Lieutenant Krill's exoskeleton clicked nervously as he shifted his weight from one spindly leg to the other. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic hegemony fell into stunned silence. The 7 representatives of the most powerful species in the known universe exchanged worried glances, or whatever passed for glances among species that communicated primarily through pheromones or telepathy. Counselor Zix of the Arcturian Dominion, a being composed mostly of crystalline structures that refracted the dim blue light of the chamber in hypnotic patterns, finally broke the silence. Perhaps this is a translation error? Humans cannot possibly be this brazen? No translation error, rumbled Counselor Grath, the massive rock-like Petrosian representative. My species has been studying human languages for the past solar cycle. They are remarkably direct, also fond of what they call hyperbole, though in this case, I believe they mean it quite literally. Admiral Vexthor's tentacles coiled tightly against his torso. The Zalaxian Empire has conquered 3,000 star systems in the last millennium. No species has ever dared to speak to us with such attitude, offered Krill. Insolence! Vexthor thundered, slamming a tentacle against the marble-like surface of the council table. And over what? A simple planetary acquisition in their outer territories? It's barely habitable by their standards. Actually, sir, Krill ventured, his voice barely above a whisper. The humans appear to have formed an emotional attachment to what they call New Montana. They claim to enjoy the, fishing. Fishing! Screeched Counselor Phi Epsilon, the insectoid representative of the Hive Collective. They would risk interstellar war over the recreational pursuit of aquatic creatures? It's more complicated than that, offered Grath, his gravelly voice resonating through the chamber. Humans display territorial behaviors unlike any species we've encountered. They don't just claim planets for resources, they love them. Love? The word seemed to cause physical pain to Admiral Vexthor. What kind of evolutionary disadvantage is that? A significant one, I would presume, said Counselor Zix, crystal facets glimmering thoughtfully. Which is why it is so puzzling that they have survived this long. The holographic display in the center of the chamber flickered to life, showing the unmistakable blue-green marble of Earth. Their homeworld is unremarkable, noted Phi Epsilon. Class M planet, nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, mostly water. Nothing that would suggest they should be particularly formidable. Grath made a sound that might have been a laugh if Petrosians were capable of humor. That is where you are mistaken, Counselor. The humans are from what they themselves classify as a death world. Preposterous, scoffed Vexthor. No intelligent life evolves on death worlds. The environmental pressures are too extreme. And yet, Grath continued, their planet experiences catastrophic weather events, tectonic instability, regular asteroidal bombardment, constantly shifting climate patterns, and hosts over 8 million species, many of which have evolved specifically to kill humans. The council members shifted uncomfortably. And yet they survived, mused Zix. Not just survived, corrected Grath. They dominate. Their history is an unbroken chain of one species. Them, systematically conquering every environmental challenge their planet could produce. They have outlasted ice ages, supervolcanoes, plagues, and their own nuclear weapons. Lieutenant Krill cleared his throat, or whatever passed for a throat in Zalaxian physiology. There's more, sir. Our intelligence indicates that humans, well, they actually enjoy confronting danger. They climb mountains because, and I quote, they're there. They jump out of perfectly functional aircraft for recreation. Some even chase storms that can level their dwellings. Admiral Vexthor's color shifted from its usual imperious purple to a sickly mauve. Are you suggesting these creatures are insane? By our standards? Absolutely, Krill confirmed. But it's worse than that, sir. They're also remarkably adaptive. Their short lifespans have accelerated their evolution and technological development. They went from atmospheric flight to moon landing in less than one of their centuries. Counselor Phi Epsilon's mandibles clicked rapidly, the insectoid equivalent of nervous fidgeting. The question before this council is simple. Do we return their colony world and apologize? Or do we teach these upstart mammals the consequences of threatening the hegemony? Vexthor's tentacles twisted into what xenobiologists would later identify as the Zolaxian expression for righteous indignation. The Zolaxian Empire does not apologize. We have a reputation to maintain. If we back down to these primates, every species in the galaxy will think they can challenge our supremacy. Grath's rocky exterior rumbled as he shifted in his seat. Admiral, with all due respect, you should review the classified intelligence on human warfare before making your decision. What could be so impressive about primitive beings who have barely established a presence beyond their own star system? Demanded Vexthor. The chamber darkened as Grath activated his personal data terminal. A series of images flickered across the holographic display, scenes of human conflicts through the ages. These creatures, Grath explained, invented over 100 ways to kill each other before they discovered electricity. Their history is essentially one long war interrupted by brief periods of preparing for the next war. They have turned their most advanced scientific discoveries, medicine, nuclear energy, even their planetary communications network, into weapons. The images shifted to show humans in various environments: desert, Arctic, jungle, urban ruins. They can fight anywhere, Grath continued. They have soldiers specially trained for every conceivable environment. Some can survive for weeks with minimal supplies. Others can eliminate targets from distances their prey can't even see. They call these individuals snipers, and they are terrifyingly patient. But surely their technology is no match for our quantum weaponry and faster-than-light capabilities, protested Phi Epsilon. Krill cleared his throat again. That's just it, Counselor. Humans don't fight conventionally. When faced with a technologically superior adversary, they adapt. Our simulations suggest they would resort to guerrilla tactics, sabotage, even suicide attacks if necessary. Suicide attacks? Admiral Vexthor's eye stalks went rigid with shock. They would sacrifice themselves willingly? They have entire historical epics glorifying such behavior, confirmed Grath. They call them last stands, situations where warriors fought to the death against impossible odds to protect their territory or ideals. The council chamber grew uncomfortably quiet as the implications sank in. There's one more thing, Krill added hesitantly. The humans have a saying that our cultural analysts find particularly troubling. When faced with overwhelming opposition, they don't surrender. Instead, they say, "Hold my beer." Beer? Questioned Zix. A mild poison they consume for pleasure, explained Grath. The phrase essentially means, "Watch me do something so reckless and dangerous that you won't believe it's possible." Admiral Vexthor's color had now faded to an unhealthy gray. Are you suggesting that if we press this conflict, they will likely respond with disproportionate and creative violence? Yes, confirmed Grath. Their historical records are filled with examples of technologically inferior human forces defeating superior adversaries through sheer determination and unconventional tactics. The Admiral's tentacles drooped noticeably. Then what do you suggest, Counselor? We cannot simply return the colony and admit defeat. Actually, interjected a new voice from the chamber entrance. That's exactly what you're going to do. The council members turned as one to see a human female striding confidently into the chamber, dressed in a simple dark uniform bearing only a small insignia. The Earth crescent wrapped around a stylized olive branch. Ambassador Frost, Grath acknowledged with what passed for a Petrosian nod. The council was just discussing your transmission to Admiral Vexthor. I figured as much, the ambassador replied, casually taking a seat at the council table without being invited. A breach of protocol that caused Phi Epsilon's antennae to twitch violently. You have no authority to enter these chambers uninvited, hissed Admiral Vexthor, regaining some of his composure. Ambassador Frost smiled, though anyone familiar with human expressions would have noted it didn't reach her eyes. Funny thing about authority, Admiral. It only exists when everyone agrees it does. Kind of like your claim to New Montana. She tossed a small device onto the center of the table, which projected a hologram of the disputed colony world. Let me be perfectly clear, she continued, her voice pleasant but with an unmistakable edge. New Montana has exactly 0 strategic value to your empire. It's a backwater planet with lousy mineral deposits and a slightly toxic atmosphere. But it happens to be where 50,000 human colonists have decided to build their homes, and more importantly, where they go fishing on weekends. The territory falls within the expansion zone granted to the Zolaxian Empire by this very council, protested Vexthor. Paperwork mistake, Frost replied with a dismissive wave of her hand. Happens all the time in bureaucracies. Easy to fix. You cannot simply— Oh, but I can, Frost interrupted. Because here's what's going to happen if you don't return our colony and compensate the families of the 12 settlers your pacification force killed during the occupation. She tapped the device, and the hologram shifted to show a series of Zalaxian mining outposts near the border of human space. These facilities are currently under observation by what we call Special Forces. Very motivated individuals who excel at breaking things and creating general havoc. If we don't reach an agreement in the next 24 hours, these outposts will experience a series of unfortunate accidents. The Admiral's eye stalks quivered with rage. You're threatening us with terrorism! Frost's smile widened. No, Admiral. I'm threatening you with consequences. The hegemony will never bow to such... The hegemony, Frost cut in again, should probably know what they're dealing with before making dramatic proclamations. She tapped the device once more, and the hologram shifted to show Earth's solar system. We humans have a peculiar trait, Admiral. We prepare for the worst. We hope for peace while designing for war. For the past 70 years, we've been building our defenses under the assumption that we'd eventually encounter hostile aliens. The hologram zoomed in to show what appeared to be unremarkable asteroids throughout the system. These aren't just rocks, she explained. They're automated weapons platforms, self-replicating, AI-controlled, and programmed with one simple directive. If Earth goes dark, unleash hell on whoever's responsible. Admiral Vexthor's tentacles coiled tightly. You're bluffing. Maybe, Frost conceded with a shrug. But here's the thing about humans, Admiral. We're terrible gamblers, but we love to play games where the odds are stacked against us. It's a quirk of our psychology. And right now, you're betting that a species crazy enough to ride explosions into space, who turned a physics experiment into a planet-killing weapon within a decade of discovering atomic theory, and who will literally fight to the death over fishing rights, is bluffing. She leaned forward, voice dropping to a near whisper. Do you really want to make that bet? The council chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. Finally, Councillor Grath spoke. I move that we reconsider the territorial boundaries near human space, effective immediately. Seconded, said Zix quickly. Admiral Vexthor's eye stalks drooped in defeat. The Zalaxian Empire will reconsider its claim to the world known as New Montana. Ambassador Frost stood, straightening her uniform. Excellent. I'll expect confirmation of your withdrawal and the compensation packages for the affected families by this time tomorrow. Always a pleasure doing business with the hegemony. As she turned to leave, Admiral Vexthor couldn't contain himself. This isn't over, human. The galaxy will remember this insult. Frost paused at the doorway and looked back over her shoulder. You know what, Admiral? I hope they do. Because the galaxy should probably understand something about humans. We don't want your worlds. We don't need your resources. And we genuinely prefer to be left alone to fish, drink our beer, and explore the stars at our own pace. But if pushed... Her smile turned predatory. Well, we've spent thousands of years practicing the art of war on each other. Imagine what we could do if we actually united against an external threat. With that, she was gone, leaving the council in stunned silence. Lieutenant Krill approached the Admiral cautiously. Sir, what are our orders regarding New Montana? Admiral Vexthor stared at the space where the human had been standing. Full withdrawal, immediately. And the compensation packages? Approve them, double the amount. And Lieutenant? Yes, Admiral. Begin compiling a comprehensive analysis of human territory. I want to ensure we never accidentally encroach on their space again. Yes, sir. That seems wise. As the council members dispersed, Councillor Grath approached Admiral Vexthor. If it's any consolation, Admiral, you're not the first to underestimate them. But let me offer a word of advice. Study them. Learn from them. Learn? From primitives? Yes, Grath rumbled. Because there's one more human trait you should understand. They bear grudges, but they also form surprisingly strong alliances, even with former enemies. In fact, they respect worthy adversaries. You suggest we could eventually ally with these barbarians? I suggest, Grath replied, that being on the same side as humans in a fight is historically a much more comfortable position than being against them. 2 standard galactic weeks later, Admiral Vexthor found himself in the uncomfortable position of hosting Ambassador Frost on his flagship. The human appeared utterly unconcerned by being surrounded by beings who had, until recently, been planning her species' subjugation. I appreciate the tour, Admiral, she said, sipping from a container of what his sensors identified as the toxic substance humans called coffee. Your bioengineered ship systems are quite impressive. Vex Thor's tentacles twisted in what he hoped conveyed formal politeness rather than lingering resentment. The Zalaxian Empire has perfected organic technology over millennia, Ambassador. Our vessels are grown, not built. Fascinating approach, she replied. We've experimented with similar concepts, but never quite cracked it at this scale. We tend to favor mechanical solutions, though our newer ships incorporate biological elements for certain systems. The Admiral paused, his curiosity momentarily overcoming his disdain. Your species has achieved partial biointegration? That's unexpected for your technological level. Frost smiled. Admiral, has it occurred to you that we might not be showing you everything we have? Humans tend to hold a few cards back, just in case. Cards? Never mind. Earth idiom. She gestured toward a viewport showing the stars. So, I understand your civilization has catalogued over 30,000 habitable worlds. 33,457 to be precise, Vex Thor replied, a hint of pride creeping into his voice modulation. The hegemony controls nearly a quarter of the galaxy. Impressive, Frost acknowledged. Though I'm curious, how many of those worlds have indigenous sentient species? The Admiral's eye stalks stiffened slightly. 187 worlds host pre-spaceflight civilizations. They are under hegemony protection and observation. Protection, Frost repeated, taking another sip of her coffee. Like New Montana was? Thor's gaze shifted to deep purple, a sign of embarrassment. That was an unfortunate misunderstanding. Of course, she agreed, though her tone suggested otherwise. And these protected species, do they have representation in your hegemony? A voice in decisions that affect their worlds? They are not yet ready for such responsibility, Vex Thor replied stiffly. When they achieve certain technological benchmarks, they will be considered for associate status. I see. And who decides these benchmarks? The Founding Council, naturally. Frost nodded thoughtfully. So the powerful decide when the less powerful deserve rights. Interesting system. Very efficient. Vex Thor detected the criticism in her tone. Your species would approach this differently? Let's just say humanity has a complicated history with more technologically advanced civilizations deciding what's best for the less developed ones. It rarely ends well for anyone involved. Before the Admiral could respond, his communication implant chimed. Excuse me, Ambassador, I'm needed on the command deck. Of course, she replied. I'll just enjoy the view. When Vex Thor returned several minutes later, he found the human standing exactly where he'd left her, staring out at the stars with an expression he couldn't interpret. Is everything all right, Admiral? She asked without turning. A minor security matter, he dismissed. Ambassador, I must confess I find your species perplexing. You threaten war over a single colony, yet now you speak of diplomatic concerns for species you've never even met. Frost turned to face him. That's because you're still thinking of us as a monolith, Admiral. Humans are contradictory by nature. We're capable of tremendous violence and surprising compassion, sometimes within the same individual, often within the same day. That seems inefficient from an evolutionary standpoint. And yet, here we are, she said with a slight smile. Perhaps what seems like contradiction to you is actually adaptation to us. We can be whatever we need to be to survive. Warriors when threatened, diplomats when possible, explorers when curious. Vex Thor's tentacles shifted thoughtfully. The Counselor Grath suggested something similar. He believes your species could be a valuable ally. Do you agree, Admiral? His color shifted to a contemplative blue. I am beginning to see possibilities I had not considered before. Well, that's progress, Frost said. And speaking of progress, I have a proposal for you to consider. A proposal? She nodded. Earth is hosting a diplomatic conference next month. Representatives from several independent worlds beyond hegemony space will be attending. We'd like to extend an invitation to the hegemony as well. Vex Thor's eye stalks stiffened in surprise. This is unexpected. Is it? You've spent centuries expanding outward. We've spent decades preparing for first contact scenarios. Now that we've both had our misunderstanding, perhaps it's time to establish clearer channels of communication. Her expression turned serious. Because let me be clear, Admiral. Humanity has no interest in galactic conquest or challenging hegemony territory. But we will defend what's ours, and we will form our own alliances with whoever shares our values. And what values might those be, Ambassador? Self-determination, mutual respect, and the radical notion that being technologically advanced doesn't automatically make one species superior to another. She held his gaze steadily. Do you think the hegemony could work within such a framework? Vexthor was silent for a long moment, his analytical mind reassessing everything he thought he knew about these humans. I cannot speak for the entire hegemony, he finally said, but I believe this conference merits consideration. Excellent, Frost replied. I'll send the formal invitation through diplomatic channels. And Admiral, bring your appetite. We humans consider sharing food an essential part of diplomacy. Is this the beer your soldiers mentioned? Frost laughed, a sound Vexthor found strangely disarming. Among other things, though I'd recommend starting with something milder. Human intoxicants can be potent for non-terrestrial biology. As she departed for her shuttle, Vexthor found himself watching her with something approaching respect. These humans were dangerous, yes, but perhaps not in the way he had initially assumed. He activated his communication implant. Lieutenant Krill, prepare a report for the Council. Subject: recommended revisions to our first contact protocols. Regarding humans specifically, sir? No, Lieutenant. His gaze still fixed on the departing human shuttle. Regarding any species that appears deceptively primitive. Sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones that don't immediately show their teeth. 3 Earth months later, Ambassador Frost stood on the observation deck of the United Earth diplomatic vessel Horizon, watching as ships from 27 different species maneuvered into orbit around Earth. The hegemony contingent had arrived last, their massive bioships dwarfing most of the other vessels in the makeshift fleet. Quite the gathering, remarked Commander Thompson, the Horizon's military liaison. Never thought I'd see the day when Zolaxian ships would be peacefully orbiting Earth. The universe is full of surprises, Frost replied, especially when you threaten to blow up someone's mining operations. Thompson chuckled. Still can't believe that worked. Those special forces you mentioned were fictional, right? Let's just say I exaggerated our deployment capabilities a bit. She smiled thinly, though not our willingness to use them if necessary. And the automated defense platforms? Oh, those are real enough, though not nearly as numerous as I implied. She turned to face him. Sometimes, Commander, perception is as powerful as reality. The hegemony needed to understand that humanity isn't to be trifled with, even if we had to embellish our capabilities a bit to make the point. Reminds me of that old Earth saying, "It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog," Frost finished. Precisely, her communication device chimed. Ambassador, Admiral Vexthor is requesting permission to come aboard for a pre-conference meeting. Granted, she replied. Have him escorted to Conference Room A. Playing host to the being who nearly started an interstellar war, Thompson remarked. Diplomatic life certainly has its ironies. More than you know, Commander. Frost straightened her uniform. The Admiral and I have developed an understanding of sorts. He's actually quite rational once you get past the imperialistic arrogance. If you say so. Just remember, some of us are still a bit touchy about those colonists they killed on New Montana. As am I, Frost replied, her expression hardening momentarily. Which is why the compensation packages were triple what we initially demanded, and why there's now a hegemony agreement to respect a 50-light-year buffer zone around all human colonies. Expensive lesson for them. The best kind, she agreed. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an admiral to educate on the finer points of human diplomacy. When she arrived at the conference room, Vexthor was already waiting, his tentacles arranged in what she'd come to recognize as a formal greeting posture. Ambassador Frost, your vessel is most unusual. Unusual how, Admiral? It appears primarily decorative rather than functional. There are many design elements that serve no apparent purpose. Frost smiled. You've noticed our aesthetic sensibilities. Humans find beauty important, even in military and diplomatic vessels. We function better in pleasing environments. Fascinating inefficiency, Vexthor remarked, though his tone held curiosity rather than criticism. My analysts have been studying your species extensively since our encounter. They find your contradictions most perplexing. And what contradictions have they found most interesting? Frost asked, gesturing for him to take a seat at the conference table. Vexthor's body contorted into the Zolaxian equivalent of a seated position. You are simultaneously collaborative and fiercely independent. You form complex social structures yet celebrate individual achievement above collective success. You create magnificent art alongside terrifying weapons. And perhaps most bafflingly, you extend protection to creatures that offer you no evolutionary advantage. You mean pets? Among other examples, yes. My species would never expend resources on non-useful organisms. And yet we do, Frost said. Because there's more to life than mere survival or efficiency, Admiral. There's joy, beauty, compassion, things that can't be measured in resource expenditures. These concepts are difficult for Zalaxians to comprehend, Vexthor admitted, though I am attempting to understand. That's more than I expected, honestly, Frost replied. So, shall we discuss the conference agenda? I understand the hegemony has concerns about our proposed non-interference doctrine for pre-spaceflight civilizations. Indeed. The hegemony's prosperity has been built on careful management of developing worlds and their resources. Your proposal would significantly curtail our expansion capabilities. Or, Frost countered, it would prompt innovation in resource utilization rather than simply claiming more territory. There are plenty of uninhabited worlds with abundant resources, but fewer with compatible biospheres for our colonization needs. Which brings us to our second proposal. Technology exchange for terraforming methodologies. Earth scientists have developed techniques that could benefit hegemony expansion without requiring the exploitation of already inhabited worlds. Vexthor's eye stalks quivered with what Frost had come to recognize as surprise. You would share such technology? Even after our conflict? That's how humans operate, Admiral. We fight fiercely when threatened, but we're equally committed to finding peaceful solutions when possible. She leaned forward. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us. We don't need to compete when cooperation yields better results for everyone. A remarkably pragmatic perspective, Vexthor acknowledged, though some within the hegemony would view such cooperation as weakness. And how do you view it, Admiral? His tentacles shifted in a pattern she hadn't seen before. I find myself re-evaluating many of my species' assumptions, Ambassador. Your response to our incursion was not what our models predicted. You had every right to escalate the conflict. It seems a path that protected your interests while offering us a dignified resolution. We've had enough war in our history to know it's rarely the best solution, Frost said quietly. Though make no mistake, we'll fight if we must. Of that, I have no doubt, Vexthor replied, which is precisely why this conference is necessary. Better to establish clear boundaries now than misunderstand each other later. Their conversation was interrupted by a communication alert. Ambassador, we're receiving reports of an unidentified vessel approaching Earth at high velocity. It's not responding to hails. Frost's expression turned serious. Excuse me, Admiral. She activated the room's display screen, showing a tactical overview of near-Earth space. A small, fast-moving object was indeed approaching Earth, bypassing the established arrival corridors. Analysis? She demanded. Unknown configuration, came the response. Not matching any known hegemony or independent world design. Weapon systems appear to be active. Vexthor moved to join her at the display. This is not a hegemony vessel, Ambassador. Our entire delegation is already in orbit. Could it be from another hegemony species acting independently? Unlikely, Vexthor replied, his tentacles shifting into what she recognized as a combat-ready posture. All hegemony activities in this sector were suspended for the conference. The tactical officer's voice came through again. Ambassador, the vessel is ignoring all warnings and continues on approach trajectory. Defense protocols are automatically engaging in 30 seconds unless countermanded. Frost glanced at Vexthor. Expression hardening. If this is some kind of test, it is not, the Admiral interrupted firmly. But whoever this is, they appear intent on disrupting our diplomatic efforts. She made a quick decision. Tactical, hold automated defenses but bring point defense systems to ready status. And patch me through to all diplomatic vessels. The display flickered as it connected to the fleet in orbit. Attention all diplomatic delegations. We have an unknown vessel approaching Earth in violation of agreed-upon protocols. As a precaution, Earth defense systems are being activated. This is not, repeat, not directed at any conference participants. Please maintain your current positions and stand by for further information. No sooner had she finished speaking than the unidentified vessel accelerated dramatically, its trajectory now clearly aimed at the gathered diplomatic fleet. It's targeting the Arcturian vessel, reported Tactical. Impact in 15 seconds unless intercepted. Frost looked to Vexthor. Admiral, I need to know if this is a known threat to the hegemony. His eye stalks focused intensely on the display. That configuration. It resembles vessels used by the Krell remnant, a species the hegemony displaced from their homeworld 3 centuries ago. They occasionally launch terrorist attacks against hegemony interests, but never anything of this scale. Tactical. Intercept that vessel immediately, Frost ordered. Target engines only if possible. Too late for a clean intercept, came the response. We'd have to destroy it completely to prevent impact with the Arcturian ship. Frost hesitated for only a second. Then do it! The screen showed a brief flash as Earth defense systems fired, vaporizing the approaching vessel. All diplomatic vessels. This is Ambassador Frost. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We are investigating the incident and will provide more information as it becomes available. Please maintain security protocols until further notice. She turned to Vexthor, whose tentacles were now writhing in what appeared to be agitation. Admiral, I need everything you have on these Krell immediately. Of course, he agreed. Though I must warn you, if this was indeed a Krell attack, it may not be the last. They are known for their persistence. Then, perhaps, Frost replied grimly. This conference just got more urgent than either of us anticipated. The Emergency Security Council convened within the hour, with representatives from Earth, the hegemony, and the independent worlds crammed into the Horizon's main conference room. The atmosphere was tense, with accusations and demands for explanations flying from all sides. Order, please, Frost called out over the clamor. We can't address this situation if we're all shouting over each other. Gradually, the room quieted. Thank you. Now, Admiral Vexthor has provided information about the likely attackers. Admiral, if you would. Vexthor moved to the central display, his tentacles activating the controls with surprising dexterity. An image appeared of a reptilian species with distinctive bony ridges. The Krell, he began, were once a mid-tier civilization occupying 7 worlds along what is now the interior boundary of hegemony space. Approximately 300 Earth years ago, they refused to join the hegemony and attempted to form a rival power bloc. The resulting conflict ended with their defeat and relocation to a single reservation world. You mean you took their planets and crammed an entire species onto one world? Asked the representative from Proxima Colony, his tone incredulous. It was considered merciful at the time, Vexthor replied, his color shifting slightly. The alternative would have been extinction. How generous, muttered someone from the Earth delegation. Frost raised a hand for silence. Recent history aside, what we need to understand is their current capabilities and motives. Admiral, the Krell have maintained a persistent but minor resistance movement, Vexthor continued, occasionally launching attacks against hegemony targets, primarily military or industrial. Until now, they have never targeted diplomatic functions or neutral parties. Could they have been trying to disrupt the conference specifically? Asked Councillor Zix, whose crystalline form shimmered with apparent anxiety. Possible, acknowledged Vexthor, though attacking the Arcturian vessel specifically suggests a different motive. The Arcturians were not involved in the original Krell conflict. Unless, suggested Frost, the target wasn't the Arcturians specifically, but any hegemony vessel, and the Arcturian ship was simply the most vulnerable approach vector. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. You believe this was a suicide attack meant to derail our diplomatic efforts, Vexthor stated. It fits the profile, Frost replied. What better way to ensure continued conflict between humanity and the hegemony than to attack during our first major diplomatic gathering? If Earth vessels had fired on hegemony ships, even in defense, the political fallout would have been significant, Vexthor acknowledged. The Proxima representative leaned forward. This raises an uncomfortable question. How did they know about this conference? The location and timing were supposed to be closely guarded information. Eyes and various sensory appendages turned toward the hegemony delegation. You suspect us of leaking this information? Demanded Phi Epsilon, mandibles clicking rapidly. What possible benefit would that serve? We came here in good faith. Perhaps not all elements within the hegemony share your enthusiasm for peaceful relations, suggested Commander Thompson, who had joined the emergency session. Political factions exist in every civilization. Vexthor's tentacles coiled tightly, a gesture Frost had come to recognize as discomfort. The commander's observation has merit. The expansionist faction within our council has been vocal in their opposition to this conference. Vocal, but not treasonous, insisted Phi Epsilon. Even the expansionists wouldn't sabotage official hegemony diplomacy. Unless they believe the conference threatened their power base, mused Councillor Grath, his rocky form shifting slightly. Peaceful cooperation with humans and independent worlds would undermine the military-first policies they've championed for centuries. Frost raised her hand again. Speculation won't help us prevent another attack. What we need is intelligence. Admiral, can your forces locate the Krell homeworld and determine if this was a rogue action or something larger? Vexthor's eye stalks swiveled uncomfortably. The Krell reservation world is heavily monitored. Any unusual activity should have been detected by our surveillance systems. And yet, Thompson pointed out, somehow they managed to acquire a starship, arm it, and navigate it to Earth without your knowledge. Not exactly a ringing endorsement of your monitoring capabilities. The Admiral's color darkened to a deep purple. Your point is noted, Commander. I will dispatch an investigation team immediately. With all due respect, Frost interjected, I believe Earth should participate in this investigation. If someone is targeting this conference, we have a vested interest in finding out who and why. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room from the independent world representatives. This is highly irregular, protested Phi Epsilon. Internal hegemony security matters are not open to outside intervention. This stopped being an internal matter when they attacked a diplomatic conference in Earth orbit. Frost countered firmly. Either we work together on this, or every delegation here will have to question whether the hegemony can guarantee their safety. Vexthor and Phi Epsilon exchanged what passed for meaningful glances between their species before the Admiral finally responded. Very well. A joint investigation team, but Earth's representatives will be there as observers only. Partners, Frost corrected. Equal partners with equal access to information. After a tense silence, Vexthor's tentacles relaxed slightly. Partners, then, though the Hegemony Council will not be pleased. Sometimes progress requires discomfort, Admiral. Frost turned to address the room. In the meantime, I propose we continue with the conference as scheduled, with enhanced security protocols. Giving in to intimidation would only serve the interests of whoever is behind this attack. The meeting broke up shortly after, with the various delegations returning to their vessels under heightened security. Frost remained behind with Commander Thompson and a small Earth security team to coordinate the joint investigation. You know the hegemony is going to stonewall us at every turn, Thompson remarked once they were alone. Probably, Frost agreed. But even their obstruction will tell us something useful. Besides, I have a feeling Admiral Vexthor is starting to see the benefits of cooperation. You trust him? Thompson sounded skeptical. Trust is a strong word. Let's say I believe he's pragmatic enough to recognize when old methods aren't working. She activated her secure comm unit, which is why I've already dispatched our own reconnaissance team to gather independent intelligence. Thompson raised an eyebrow. Without consulting the Admiral? That's going to strain your newfound partnership. Only if he finds out. Frost's expression was unapologetic. Diplomacy is important, Commander, but I won't risk Earth's security on the assumption that the hegemony is being fully transparent. And if your team gets caught? Then I'll deal with the diplomatic fallout. She sighed, suddenly looking tired. Whatever happens, I need to be prepared. Those colonists on New Montana deserved better than what happened to them. I won't let any more humans die, because I was too trusting. Captain Reyes of the Earth Special Intelligence vessel Shadowfall had seen a lot of strange places in her 15 years of service, but the Krell reservation world of Vorkus 9 might just take the prize for most depressing. From orbit, it appeared unremarkable, a brownish-green world with small oceans and large deserts. But as her stealth shuttle descended through the cloud layer, the true nature of the place became apparent. The Krell, once rulers of 7 worlds, had been confined to sprawling settlement zones that resembled nothing so much as the refugee camps from Earth's troubled past. Prefabricated structures stretched to the horizon, arranged in perfect grids that suggested hegemony efficiency rather than Krell preferences. Charming vacation spot, remarked Lieutenant Foster, her second in command, as they observed from their cloaked position above the main settlement. Hard to believe anyone escapes from this paradise. Focus on the mission, Lieutenant, Reyes replied, though she silently agreed with the assessment. We need to locate their shipyards or whatever passes for them. A vessel capable of reaching Earth didn't materialize from nothing. Their sensors swept the settlement zones and surrounding areas, searching for any sign of industrial activity that might suggest spacecraft manufacturing. Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from that mountain range, Foster reported. highlighting an area approximately 80 kilometers from the main settlement, consistent with some kind of shielded facility. That's outside the designated Krell habitation zone, Reyes noted, examining the topographical data. According to the hegemony records Ambassador Frost provided, the Krell aren't permitted access to that region. Yet the energy signature has Krell technical markers, Foster countered. And look at these periodic power fluctuations, classic sign of a stealth system cycling. Reyes considered their options. Their mission was reconnaissance only, gather intelligence on potential Krell involvement in the attack and return to Earth. Direct engagement was explicitly forbidden. Take us in closer, she decided. Minimal altitude, maximum stealth. If someone's operating where they shouldn't be, I want to know who and why. The shuttle glided silently over the harsh landscape, its advanced stealth systems rendering it virtually undetectable to all but the most sophisticated sensors. As they approached the mountain range, the strange energy readings grew stronger. There, Foster pointed to what appeared to be a natural rock formation. That's no mountain. It's a disguised entrance. See how the rock patterns don't match the surrounding geology? Clever, Reyes murmured. Deploy a micro-drone. Let's see what's inside without risking the shuttle. A tiny reconnaissance drone, no larger than an insect, detached from the shuttle's underside and zipped toward the disguised entrance. Within moments, it had found an air circulation vent and slipped inside. The drone's feed appeared on their main display, showing a vast underground complex that defied all expectations. This was no primitive resistance hideout. It was a full-fledged military installation, with technology that appeared far more advanced than anything the Krell should have possessed. That's hegemony tech, Foster said, his voice hushed with disbelief. Look at those weapon systems. Those are current generation Zalaxian plasma cannons. And those ships? Reyes added, as the drone captured images of a hangar containing at least a dozen vessels similar to the one that had attacked Earth. They're not Krell design either. They're hegemony assault craft, just with modified markings. The drone continued deeper into the facility, eventually reaching what appeared to be a command center. There the feed showed something that made Reyes's blood run cold. Krell operators working alongside beings that were unmistakably hegemony officials, including several Zalaxians. Well, Foster said after a stunned silence, I guess we know who's behind the attack now. Maybe, Reyes cautioned, but we don't know why, or which faction they represent. She directed the drone to capture as much data as possible from the facility's computer terminals. We need to identify those hegemony officials before we jump to conclusions. The drone had just begun downloading data when alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. We've been detected, Foster reported urgently, as the drone's feed showed personnel rushing to battle stations. Impossible, Reyes protested. Our stealth systems, not us, Foster interrupted, pointing to the external sensors. A hegemony cruiser just dropped out of FTL in orbit. It's the official investigation team with the Earth observers. Their arrival triggered the facility's alerts. Reyes made a split-second decision. Recall the drone. We've got what we came for. Set course back to the rendezvous point. Maximum stealth. As their shuttle slipped away from the hidden base, Reyes watched the hegemony cruiser on their long-range sensors. It was heading for the main Krell settlement, seemingly oblivious to the secret facility in the mountains. They're going to find nothing, she realized aloud. The official investigation is looking in the completely wrong place. By design, I'd bet, Foster replied grimly. Question is, do we break radio silence to warn them? Reyes shook her head. Negative. We maintain protocol and deliver this intelligence directly to Ambassador Frost. If we tip our hand now, whoever is running that facility might destroy the evidence before we can prove anything. As the shuttle accelerated toward their extraction point, Reyes couldn't shake the feeling that they'd stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple terrorist attack. This wasn't just a rogue Krell operation. This was conspiracy at the highest levels of the hegemony, and Earth had just been caught in the middle. Back on the horizon, when her secure communicator vibrated with the priority signal she'd been waiting for. Excusing herself from the proceedings, she slipped into a private chamber to receive Captain Reyes's transmission. Tell me you found something, she said without preamble. More than something, Ambassador, Reyes replied, her holographic image flickering slightly due to the encrypted connection. We found a conspiracy. As Reyes detailed their discoveries and transmitted the drone's data, Frost's expression grew increasingly grim. So the attack wasn't just meant to disrupt the conference, she summarized when Reyes had finished. It was designed to fail in a way that would escalate tensions between Earth and the hegemony. That's our assessment, Reyes confirmed. If Earth forces had destroyed a hegemony vessel while defending against the attack, it would have created a diplomatic incident that the conspirators could exploit. The question is, who are these conspirators, and how high does this go? Frost studied the images of the hegemony officials working in the secret base. I recognize a few of these individuals, mid-level bureaucrats mostly, no one with significant authority. Perfect fall guys, Reyes suggested. Expendable if the operation goes wrong. Exactly my thought. Frost paced the small room. The joint investigation team is due back tomorrow. They'll report finding nothing suspicious on the Krell homeworld, which will only deepen suspicions among the delegations here. What's your next move, Ambassador? Frost paused, weighing her options. This evidence is explosive, but incomplete. We don't know which hegemony faction is behind this, or if the Council itself is involved. If I present this prematurely, it could destroy any chance of alliance with the moderate elements of the hegemony. Or prevent us from walking into a trap, Reyes countered. True, which is why I need you to continue your mission. Track the supply chains to that facility. Find out who's providing them with ships and weapons. I need to know if we're dealing with a rogue faction or something more official. Understood. We'll get on it immediately. After ending the transmission, Frost stood motionless for several minutes, considering her precarious position. The simplest course would be to expose the conspiracy immediately, perhaps even use it as leverage against the hegemony. But if this was indeed the work of an extremist faction, such a move might undermine the very moderates she needed as allies. Her decision was interrupted by another alert. This one from the conference security team. Ambassador, we've detected unusual activity aboard the Zolaxian flagship. Energy readings consistent with weapons charging, though they remain powered down. Have they made any aggressive moves? Negative, but their internal communications have increased by 300% in the last 10 minutes. They've received some kind of alert, Frost realized. Monitor them closely, but take no action unless they do. She hesitated, then added, and quietly bring our defense systems to standby, just in case. She returned to the conference chamber, where representatives were engaged in animated discussion about trade routes and regulatory frameworks. Admiral Vexthor was notably absent from the hegemony delegation. Taking her seat beside Councillor Grath, Frost leaned over and whispered, "Where's the Admiral?" "Called back to his vessel for an urgent communication," Grath rumbled quietly. Seemed disturbed. Before Frost could respond, the chamber doors slid open and Vexthor entered, his color cycling through shades of purple and blue that suggested intense emotional conflict. Without preamble, he approached the Earth delegation. "Ambassador Frost," he said, his voice modulator set to a private frequency that only she could hear. "We need to speak. Immediately. In private." The intensity of his manner left no room for refusal. With a brief nod to Grath, Frost followed the Admiral to a small anteroom adjacent to the main chamber. As soon as the doors closed behind them, Vexthor's tentacles twisted into a pattern she'd never seen before. Something between anger and distress. "Your vessel has deployed a stealth craft to the Krell reservation world," he stated flatly, "in direct violation of our agreement for a joint investigation." Frost maintained her composure. "I'm not aware of any such deployment, Admiral. Perhaps your intelligence is—" "Please," he interrupted, his color shifting to a deep indigo. "Do not insult us both with denials. Your craft was detected departing the Krell system just as our joint investigation team arrived. Its stealth technology is impressive, but not perfect." Frost considered her options quickly. Continued denial would only damage whatever trust remained between them. "Very well," she acknowledged. "Earth conducted its own reconnaissance. Given recent events, I felt it prudent to gather independent intelligence." "And did you find what you were looking for?" Vexthor's eye stalks focused intensely on her. "I think you already know the answer to that, Admiral. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation." His tentacles coiled tightly. "Then we have a problem. Because what your team discovered is something that should not exist. A hegemony black site providing advanced weapons to the very Krell who supposedly attacked us. Yes, I'd say that's a significant problem." "It is not a hegemony facility," Vexthor stated emphatically. "At least not an authorized one." "Then who?" "The expansionist faction," he cut in. "My sources have confirmed it. They've been operating covertly, building power and resources outside official channels. This attack was meant to derail our diplomatic efforts and reignite conflict between humanity and the hegemony. Frost studied him carefully. Why are you telling me this, Admiral? Surely exposing internal hegemony corruption to an outsider violates every protocol you have. Because, Vexthor replied, his voice modulator dropping to its lowest setting. I believe the expansionists have infiltrated the highest levels of our government, including parts of my own command structure. If this conspiracy is exposed through official channels, the evidence will disappear, and so will anyone who discovered it. Including you, Frost realized. Including me, he confirmed. And possibly including Earth, if the expansionists achieve their ultimate goal of military dominance. It was a stunning admission from a being who, just months ago, had been prepared to subjugate human colonies without a second thought. What are you proposing, Admiral? A dangerous gambit, he replied. We expose the conspiracy together, publicly, during the conference, with evidence that neither of us could present alone. The expansionists would retaliate immediately. Yes, which is why we would need allies ready to act when they do. His tentacles formed a gesture that Frost recognized as a formal petition. Ambassador, I never thought I would say this to a representative of any non-hegemony world, but I need your help. Frost allowed herself a small, grim smile. Well, Admiral, it seems humans aren't the only ones full of surprises. She extended her hand, a human gesture of agreement. Let's catch some conspirators. The plan came together with remarkable speed, necessity driving both human and hegemony teams to work with an efficiency that surprised everyone involved. Within 12 hours, they had compiled their evidence, identified key expansionist operatives among the hegemony delegation, and positioned security forces strategically throughout the horizon. This would be easier if we could just arrest them all, Commander Thompson grumbled as he reviewed the final security arrangements. And risk tipping them off before we have everyone identified? Frost shook her head. To expose the entire network, not just the agents at this conference. Vexthor, who had remained aboard the Horizon under the pretense of extended diplomatic discussions, manipulated a holographic display showing the positions of various hegemony vessels in Earth orbit. The cruiser dominant concerns me most, he said, highlighting a massive bioship near the outer defense perimeter. Its commander, Velnar, is a known expansionist sympathizer. Once we make our move, he may attempt military action. Let him try, Thompson replied with the easy confidence that had become a hallmark of human military officers. Our defense grid is fully operational, and we've quietly reinforced our orbital platforms while everyone was focused on the conference. The goal is to avoid combat, Frost reminded him. The expansionists want conflict. We need to deny them that opportunity. Indeed, agreed Vexthor, which is why the timing of our announcement must coincide precisely with the security action aboard the implicated vessels. The plan was audacious. Frost and Vexthor would present their evidence to the full conference, while simultaneous operations targeted expansionist agents throughout the diplomatic fleet. Success depended on perfect coordination and the element of surprise. There's one more thing, Frost said, activating her own display. Captain Reyes has discovered something disturbing about the Krell involvement. She brought up images from the Black Site. These aren't just allied Krell working with expansionists. According to genetic scans, they've been modified. Their aggression enhanced, their cognitive functions altered to increase obedience. Vexthor's color paled. Such modifications are forbidden under hegemony law. Yet another crime to add to the list, Thompson remarked grimly. But it also means the Krell as a species aren't necessarily willing participants, Frost pointed out. They're victims too, being used as convenient scapegoats and attack dogs. Vexthor's tentacles shifted thoughtfully. This revelation could help sway the moderate council members. The abuse of a protected species, even one with a troubled history, violates the hegemony's founding principles. That's what I'm counting on, Frost said. Now let's run through the final sequence once more. The next day, the conference reconvened with all delegations present. The agenda called for discussions on non-interference policies regarding developing worlds, a topic guaranteed to generate heated debate. But before the scheduled proceedings could begin, Ambassador Frost requested the floor for a special announcement. Distinguished representatives, she began, her voice steady despite the tension crackling through the chamber. Yesterday, we experienced an attack that many believed was the work of Krell extremists. Today, I must inform you that this understanding was incomplete. Murmurs rippled through the assembly as a large holographic display activated above the center of the chamber. With the cooperation of Admiral Vexthor of the Zalaxian Empire, Frost continued, nodding to the Admiral who had taken position beside her. Earth has uncovered evidence of a conspiracy that threatens not just this conference, but the stability of the galaxy itself. The display showed the first images from Captain Reyes's reconnaissance, the secret facility, the modified Krell, the hegemony officials supervising operations. What you are seeing, Vexthor explained, is an unauthorized military installation on the Krell Reservation world, a facility constructed and operated by elements within the hegemony in direct violation of our laws and treaties. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations and demands for explanation. Among the hegemony delegation, several representatives suddenly rose, their postures suggesting alarm. "Security teams, execute containment protocol," Frost said quietly into her communicator. Throughout the chamber, human and loyal hegemony security personnel moved swiftly to surround the identified expansionist agents. Simultaneously, aboard the diplomatic vessels, joint teams began securing critical systems and detaining suspected conspirators. The attack on this conference, Frost continued over the commotion, was engineered to fail in a way that would reignite tensions between Earth and the hegemony, specifically to undermine the diplomatic process we have all worked so hard to establish. "This is outrageous!" shouted a Zalaxian official whom Vexthor had identified as a senior expansionist. "These accusations are based on fabricated evidence. The humans are attempting to divide the hegemony." "The evidence is quite real, Councillor Mevtol," Vexthor replied calmly. "As real as the communications you exchanged with the commanders of that facility 2 days before the attack." The accused official's eye stalks went rigid with shock as Vexthor displayed the intercepted communications. Communications that implicated not just Mevtol, but over a dozen high-ranking hegemony officials. "Admiral," came an urgent report over the security channel. "The cruiser Dominant has powered weapons and shields. They're moving to combat stance." "As expected," Vexthor replied. He addressed the chamber again. "It appears some elements of our fleet are unwilling to accept the exposure of their crimes. I urge all loyal hegemony vessels to stand down and await further instructions from legitimate authority." On the tactical display, the Dominant continued its aggressive approach, ignoring all hails. "Commander Thompson," Frost said quietly, "activate defense countermeasures. Non-lethal options only." "Acknowledged," Thompson replied, his fingers dancing across his control panel. Outside, in Earth orbit, previously hidden defense platforms suddenly revealed themselves, surrounding the rogue cruiser with overwhelming force. Precision targeting systems locked onto its propulsion and weapons systems, ready to disable but not destroy. "Cruiser Dominant," Thompson broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Earth Defense Command. Power down your weapons systems immediately, or we will be forced to disable your vessel. You are outnumbered and outgunned. There is no scenario where this ends well for you." For a tense moment, it seemed the cruiser would ignore the warning. Then, abruptly, its energy signatures began to fade as systems powered down. "They're standing down," Thompson reported with evident relief. The news rippled through the conference chamber, where security teams had already detained the identified expansionist agents. What could have devolved into a firefight had instead been resolved with minimal violence, exactly as Frost had hoped. "Representatives of the galaxy," she addressed the stunned assembly. "What you have witnessed today is not just the exposure of a conspiracy, but proof that cooperation between our civilizations is stronger than those who would divide us. Earth and the loyal elements of the hegemony have demonstrated that together we can overcome threats that neither of us could have addressed alone." Vexthor moved forward, his color now a steady, determined blue. "The hegemony has existed for millennia under the principle that strength comes from unity and order. Today, we have been shown that true strength may require something more, the willingness to acknowledge our mistakes and learn from others." The aftermath unfolded over the following weeks with a speed that surprised even the most optimistic observers. The hegemony, embarrassed by the exposure of the expansionist conspiracy and eager to maintain its standing, moved swiftly to implement reforms that would have been unthinkable months earlier. The Krell reservation system was abolished, with plans developed to restore limited sovereignty to their remaining population. The notified Krell were offered medical intervention to reverse their genetic alterations, and a truth commission was established to document the abuses they had suffered. More significantly, the Hegemony Council approved preliminary measures to create a new interstellar governing body, one where Earth and the independent worlds would have equal representation alongside the traditional hegemony powers. Ambassador Frost found herself working 18-hour days coordinating these rapid developments, often alongside Admiral Vexthor, whose role in exposing the conspiracy had elevated him to an unexpected position of influence within the reformed hegemony leadership. "You look exhausted," the Admiral observed as they reviewed draft provisions for the new Galactic Charter in her office aboard the Horizon. "Do humans not require regular rest cycles?" Frost smiled tiredly, setting down her ever-present coffee cup. "We do, but we're remarkably good at ignoring that requirement when necessary. Another of our contradictory traits." "I have been compiling quite a list of those," Vexthor admitted. "My report to the Council on Human Psychology now exceeds 30,000 data units." "I'm flattered we're such an interesting study." Interesting is perhaps an understatement. His tentacles formed what she now recognized as a gesture of amused respect. "You are the only species I have encountered who can simultaneously threaten planetary devastation and work tirelessly for peaceful cooperation, and somehow make both seem entirely reasonable." "We contain multitudes," Frost quipped. "Though I suspect every species does, if given the chance to express it." "Perhaps," Vexthor acknowledged. "The expansionists certainly demonstrated that Zolaxians are not as unified in purpose as we've always claimed." Their conversation was interrupted by Commander Thompson's arrival, his expression suggesting important news. "The Hegemony Council has just unanimously approved the new Montana Accords," he announced. "All 27 independent worlds have signed on as well." Frost let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Then it's official. The Galactic Cooperative is established." "Indeed," Vexthor confirmed, his color brightening to what Frost had come to recognize as the Zolaxian equivalent of satisfaction. "Though I must admit, naming our historic new interstellar governance structure after a human fishing colony displays a certain audacity that only your species could imagine." "Consider it a reminder," Frost replied with a small smile. "Sometimes the most important things aren't the ones that look the most impressive. A lesson the hegemony has learned at considerable cost," Vexthor acknowledged. "Though perhaps it was one we needed to learn." Thompson cleared his throat. "There's one more thing, Ambassador. The Arcturian delegation has requested your presence. Apparently, they've been working on something they call a gesture of interspecies solidarity." "That sounds ominous," Frost remarked, rising from her desk. "With the Arcturians, who can tell?" Thompson shrugged. "Their crystalline thought processes remain somewhat opaque to us." When they arrived at the Arcturian diplomatic suite, they found representatives from nearly all the conference delegations gathered around a large covered object in the center of the room. Councillor Zix's crystalline form shimmered with what appeared to be excitement as they approached. "Ambassador Frost, Admiral Vexthor," the Arcturian greeted them, facets glittering. "We have created something to commemorate this historic occasion." With a gesture from Zix, the covering was removed, revealing an intricate crystalline sculpture. It depicted representatives of all the major species: human, Zolaxian, Arcturian, Petrosian, and others, arranged in a circle, their forms connected by delicate strands of luminescent material. "It is called convergent evolution," Zix explained. "Each figure is crafted from materials native to their homeworld, yet they form a unified whole. The connecting strands represent the new pathways of cooperation we are forging together." As Frost studied the sculpture, she noticed something remarkable. When viewed from different angles, the light passing through it created different patterns, each highlighting a different aspect of the assembled species. "The most fascinating feature," Zix continued, "is that it requires the perspective of all our species to be fully appreciated. What humans see differs from what Zolaxians perceive, yet both viewpoints are equally valid and necessary for complete understanding." "A powerful metaphor," Frost acknowledged, genuinely moved by the gesture. "And an apt one," added Vexthor, his tentacles shifting to express appreciation. "Had the hegemony been capable of seeing beyond our own perspective earlier, much suffering might have been avoided." "Yet here we are," rumbled Councillor Grath, his rocky form shifting slightly. "Perhaps the universe unfolds as it must. The Krell conflict, the new Montana incident, the expansionist conspiracy, all painful steps that ultimately brought us to this moment of greater understanding." "A very philosophical interpretation," Frost remarked with a small smile. "Though I suspect the colonists of New Montana might have preferred a less dramatic path to galactic harmony." "Speaking of New Montana," Thompson interjected, checking his communication device. "I've just received word that reconstruction of the settlement areas is complete. The colonists are holding a celebration and have invited representatives from all member worlds of the new cooperative to attend. A fishing expedition, no doubt, Frost said with a laugh. Indeed, confirmed Thompson. Apparently, they're quite insistent that experiencing the perfect cast at sunrise on Lake Serenity is essential to understanding human culture. Vexthor's eye stalks quivered in what Frost had come to recognize as bewilderment. Your species would invite beings with vastly different biochemistry, respiratory requirements, and physical capabilities to engage in a recreational aquatic creature hunting ritual. Welcome to humanity, Admiral, Frost replied with a grin. We've never met an experience we didn't want to share or a friend we couldn't drag along on our adventures, whether they want to go or not. Fascinating inefficiency, Vexthor murmured, echoing his earliest assessment of human behavior. But this time his tone held something new, a grudging affection, perhaps even admiration. 2 months later, on the shores of Lake Serenity on New Montana, an unprecedented gathering took place. Representatives from 28 different species stood awkwardly along the waterline, each equipped with specially modified fishing implements designed to accommodate their unique physiologies. Ambassador Frost watched with barely concealed amusement as Admiral Vexthor attempted to cast his line, his tentacles working with surprising dexterity despite the obvious awkwardness of the task. The purpose of this activity remains somewhat opaque, he admitted as his line splashed into the water several meters short of his intended target. The nutritional value of these aquatic creatures is minimal compared to the energy expended in their capture. That's because it's not about the food, Frost explained, casting her own line with practiced ease. It's about the experience, the quiet, the connection to something older and simpler than interstellar politics. The stillness, added Counselor Grath, who had proven unexpectedly adept at fishing, his rocky patience perfectly suited to the task. Few activities encourage such peaceful contemplation. I still don't understand why this specific world was worth threatening war over, Vexthor admitted, his eye stalks scanning the misty morning landscape. It is pleasant, certainly, but hardly unique in its characteristics. Frost smiled, watching the sun break over the distant mountains, painting the lake in shimmering gold. That's the thing about humans, Admiral. We don't just claim worlds, we fall in love with them. New Montana isn't special because of its resources or strategic location. It's special because people chose to make it their home, to build their lives here, to watch these same sunrises and find peace on these shores. A remarkably inefficient basis for territorial claims, Vexthor observed, though his tone held no criticism. Inefficient, perhaps, Frost acknowledged, but very human, and as it turns out, worth defending. As if to punctuate her statement, her line suddenly went taut. Speaking of which, I've got one. The assembled diplomats watched with various expressions of interest, confusion, or amusement as she skillfully played the fish, eventually landing a shimmering, rainbow-scaled creature that thrashed energetically in the shallows. A Montana rainbow trout, she announced proudly, displaying the fish before gently releasing it back into the lake. Beautiful, isn't it? You expended significant effort to capture the creature, only to release it? Vexthor's confusion was evident in both his color and the twist of his tentacles. That's the point, Admiral. It was never about keeping the fish. Then what was it about? Frost gestured expansively to the gathering of diverse beings along the shoreline, some still awkwardly attempting to cast their lines, others engaged in quiet conversation, a few simply standing in contemplative silence enjoying the sunrise. It was about this. Different species from across the galaxy, standing together peacefully, sharing an experience that's been part of human culture for thousands of years. Yesterday we were negotiating trade agreements and security protocols. Today we're fishing together. Vexthor was silent for a long moment, his analytical mind visibly processing this concept. Finally, his color shifted to a thoughtful blue. Curious, he said at last. First encountered your species. We dismissed you as primitive, emotional, and hopelessly inefficient. Yet those very qualities have reshaped the galaxy's political landscape in mere months. There's a human saying, Frost replied with a smile. Never underestimate the power of stubborn people with fishing poles. I don't believe that is an actual human saying, Vexthor countered, his species equivalent of a skeptical expression forming on his features. Frost laughed. No, but it should be, especially after what happened with New Montana.